somebody's an expert's opinion and say, this is my opinion, just because this person said so. You have to reach the conclusion that there is God and that there is only one God, and you have to reach the conclusion that God sends prophets and why He sends prophets. Why does it make sense? Why does it not make sense that God wouldn't send prophets and wouldn't send revelation? Why does it make sense that we will be resurrected and held accountable for our work? All of those are individual obligations. Now, the paths to God, as there is a saying in Islam, the paths to God are as numerous as there is creation. Some people find God through prayer, through dreams, through looking at the trees, looking at the mountains, through religious experiences. Some people find God through math, through algebra, through astronomy, through whatever it is that works for you will get you there. And there is a guarantee in the Quran by God for those who are sincere in searching for Him that He will help you. So that search is an obligation. During the time of the Prophet, there were two communities in Yemen that converted to the faith of Islam. One community was, by all accounts, was a Jewish community that converted. They were called IHIC. They have nothing to do, for those of you who are familiar with Islamic sects, they have nothing to do with the IHIC today. But they were called the IHIC tribe that converted to the faith, and another tribe that converted to the faith. The IHIC were more knowledgeable. They were scholarly. After they converted, after a while, the Prophet gave a speech in Medina saying, why is it, how is it that neighbors do not teach neighbors? That neighbors do not ask neighbors for knowledge? And he went through great details of how neighbors are obligated to not only learn from each other, but teach each other. Now, this part of knowledge really applies to our time today. How many of us live in neighborhoods where we really don't know what our neighbors know or how much knowledge they have, or we seek knowledge from them? If we want to distill it now, is instead of thinking about being suspicious about our neighbors, or wondering what our neighbors believe, if your neighbor is a Muslim or Jewish or Mormon or whatever they are, instead of wondering, just go knock on their door and say, hey, do you mind? I know it's not common in our culture, especially in Minnesota, predominantly Scandinavian, cold. Sorry for the Scandinavians here. But the truth is, most people, if you approach them with a smile, they'll be receptive. In our neighborhood, probably 6 doors down from our house, there is a house that has a sign in front of their house that says, Blessed Ramadan to our Muslim neighbors. And we truly appreciate that in our neighborhood, in our household, for sure. We also have a community forum that my wife sees more than I do, actually. There was a discussion in that community forum. Somebody said, why do we have to put a sign on city property that says Blessed Ramadan? Clearly, this gentleman had an issue with Muslims. And I didn't see it, but my wife was telling me about it. She said the vast majority of people in the neighborhood stood up and said, you're an Islamophobe. Why would you object to something like this? I think it was my wife or my son who said, we see Merry Christmas signs in public parks. Nobody objects to those. Why are you objecting to this sign? I wish actually I knew who that neighbor is. I would love to invite him over for dinner and say, here we are. What do you like? Baklava? What kind of food you would... Knowing other people is one of the most exhilarating pieces of knowledge that we humans have. Travel. The Quran clearly states that you should travel. Emphasizes the issue of travel so much that God says on the day of judgment, people are divided into different groups. One group will say, God will say, well, why didn't you follow the truth? And they will say, oh, we didn't know God. We didn't know. We listened to CNN, Fox News, ABC, NBC. be, why didn't you travel? Travel, your mind, your spirit, your soul, who you are will expand tremendously. Travel, if you can, it's easy these days. You can travel the world now in what, about 18 hours, I think? You can go anywhere. Experience other people. Experience the culture, the feelings, the knowledge of other people. You will expand. Learn another language. That is one of the best things that you can do. One of the best things that any human being can do. When you learn another language, you really are not learning just another way to communicate with another set of people. Your mind, your brain becomes twice as big. Make no mistake about it. You become so enriched. And what's more important than all of this is that when you speak with other people, you get to know them, and when you get to know them, you get to love them. People talk about love. Such a cheap shot that people use these days. You know, love this and love that. Taking practical steps to implement and love in our lives takes a lot of work. It really does. Charity is one way, a smile is another way. These are small steps. But understanding others is one of those key components. That not only do we need to understand our neighbors, our kids. I mean, you know, many times it seems like many of us here are parents or could be parents because of our ages. You know, our kids speak different languages now, right? You know, teenagers or a little older, they use vocabulary that, you know, we're not used to. And we look it up, and sometimes they make up a lot of words, but we have to learn it. Even learning the language of our children is something that is absolutely required of us so that we can be fair to them. But coming back to knowledge, so the Prophet instructed the people who in Yemen who were more knowledgeable. He said, if you want to be true adherents of our faith, you have to teach your neighbors. So they said, Prophet, give us 1 year. They went back, and for the whole year, they dedicated their time to teaching their parents, to their neighbors. They didn't only teach them about the faith, but they also taught them how to do things. They taught them professions. They taught them skills. All of that, all of this is part of our obligation as Muslims to do towards our fellow humans. If you are a doctor, if you are an engineer, if you are a business leader, if you are a teacher, whatever your profession is, mentor somebody. That is part of your Islamic obligation. And do not ask them for anything back, because what you should expect, the reward that you should expect is from God, not from them. Do it out of the goodness of your heart that you should mentor and help other people. Imagine you teach somebody how to care for their health, and they take care of themselves and they live for 5 more years in good health, volunteering, helping poor people. You share in all of that. Imagine that. Imagine you teach somebody a skill by which they provide for their families. You share in the goodness of all of that, and you don't have to keep track of it because God does for you. So part of the teachings of our faith is that when you do a small deed, that it's like a seed that you plant and it grows and it gives fruit forever. It never dies. Everybody who benefits from your good deed, whether it's a smile on somebody's face or teaching them a good skill, is something that stays with you. But perhaps the most important knowledge for us after knowing God, because knowing God is very important, after knowing God is really knowing our fellow human beings. Knowing why they think the way they think. Not judge them, but try to understand. Imagine if we do that to each other. Imagine the amount of ignorance that we have. I want to share with you a scenario that we all live. As Americans, we live this. As a matter of fact, it doesn't matter where you are. We live this scenario where governments indoctrinate us into decisions that governments make. Governments want us to do things or approve of things that the governments want to make for reasons that they tell us are good, and sometimes they are, oftentimes they're not. Take, for example, a war. Let's say that the government decides to go into two different wars. One is just, where people are oppressed, and the government wants to go. Our government believes, the leadership believes, that we morally are obligated to go and help the people. Morality or self-righteous people. That happens. But let's say that there is really a valid reason for a government to go into war. And we support that movement. Okay, we share in that. But one war where that government, our government, decided to go into a war for ulterior motives, for oil, for political power, for political influence, or simply really because of lobbying. That happens quite often in almost every country, especially in the US. The right to petition our politicians has been so misused or abused in the US that we have gone into wars oftentimes not because it's good for the nation or because we're helping an oppressed people or because it's in the interest of our national security or anything like that. It's because influential people have the ears of the White House and Congress and Senate, and we end up going into a war and a lot of people die. Let me give you an example of such war today. Yemen. Every 10 minutes, a child dies in Yemen. Yemen is a country that is just about to completely be buried in its grave. That war was simply started because a young, foolish man in Saudi Arabia by the name of Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, decided to bomb a country next door. Why? He wanted the oil, to control the oil and have access to the ports that are in Yemen. Now, the Saudi army is inept, incapable. They need a lot of weapons. They need a lot of surveillance. We provide them with all of that. They need a lot of intelligence. It's known. These are not secrets, and I'm not revealing anything new. We provide them with all of that. We give them a bank of targets to bomb. We give them the bombs that they use to bomb the people. We give them the airplanes. We train them on those airplanes. The tanks that they use. The missiles that they use. They even used internationally prohibited bombs, cluster bombs against the people there. They bombed buses, school kid buses, repeatedly. And all of those were by bombs that are made with our taxes. So because of our ignorance about what goes on in Yemen, we become co-criminals. I know it's hard for us to hear, but that's a fact. Yemen is far away from Minnesota. Yemen is a place that most of us don't even know where it is in the map. Most of us don't even know how a Yemeni person looks like. What makes him tick? What makes him happy? What makes him sad? Most of us haven't even spoken to a Yemeni person. We don't understand the conflict. We say we don't have any soldiers there. It's the Saudis versus the Yemenis. It's people in the Middle East. They're crazy. They're killing each other. That's what we tell ourselves in our subconscious. But the truth is, it's our taxes, our manufacturers, our corporations, our politicians, our country that is providing Yemen with everything that it needs to crush a whole nation. I was watching a video today of children. They were asking them, what do you want for Eid? Eid is the conclusion of Ramadan, where we celebrate and go and eat and give each other gifts and everything. Children, looked like 7 to 10 years old. This girl said, I'd love to have my father join us at Eid. And the interviewer said, where is your father? She said, oh, he died. The Saudis killed him. Another child said, all I want to do is go back to my house. Another child said, all I want is food. I just want to taste food. Incredible what is happening. There are a lot of good people, even in the U.S., in England, in wherever they are. Over $200 million worth of aid was collected by donations of people like you, who are good people, who sent it to Yemen. It arrived at a port in Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis prevented the people from distributing it. It tried it out. In the same town, in that port, many children died while the food was held back by the Saudis. Who's responsible for that? Don't you dare go home and think that I have nothing to do with that. It's far away. If you don't speak up, if you don't object to the suffering of children in Palestine, in Africa, in our own towns, in our own streets, the homeless, then I'm speaking to the Muslims here, don't consider yourself to be a good Muslim. The Prophet said, if you wake up in the morning not being concerned about the suffering of your brothers and sisters, humans, he says you're not a Muslim. You can pray, you can fast, you can go to Mecca, you can give charity. You're not a Muslim. You need to worry about the suffering of others. So gaining knowledge is so crucial for us. If we choose, and oftentimes we choose to be ignorant, then we choose to be co-criminals. We choose to be supporters of people who commit crimes in our names. We love to feel that we're good people, and we really are. We hope to be good people. But feeling and having a good conscience versus doing are two different things, and God will hold us accountable for doing as well. Now you might say, I can't know everything, which is true. Remember what I said. Your endeavor, your struggle, your jihad, that's what jihad means, to know more suffices for God. Your steps that you take to learn more, God says, you've done your job. There is no way you're going to know everything and every event out there. But learn. Learn and you will find a different world. Learn, go back home today, tomorrow, and search. Just search on false flag operations. Your life will change forever. Learn what happened to many American sailors who died in the Mediterranean by friendly fire, who we're not allowed to speak about. Learn about, in our own country, how many communities were targeted with drugs by official U.S. government entities. It's not done anymore, hopefully. Learn about that. Dare to scare yourself. Dare to make yourself move out of your comfort zone. But if you want to be, and I will stop here to see if you have any questions. What time is it?
8:10.
Oh, 8:10, okay. If you want to be like a woman, one time I was doing martial arts at the dojo. Our trainer had a really big mouth, and he just had a lot of opinions, and he just talked and talked and talked all the time, fast. And he was criticizing some of the things that the Obama administration did. I know I know for a fact, actually, we have fans of President Obama. But you don't know this. President Obama was the most bombing president in U.S. history. Sorry to break your heart if you love President Obama. He bombed, he sent more bombs around the world, more than any other president in our history. So he was criticizing him, and he was criticizing this and that and talking about this, and he was just all over the place. This woman said something to him that I will never forget. She called him Shihan. Shihan is the title that they give to, high-ranking martial arts people. Any martial arts people here? I know. So she said, Shihan. He said, what? She said, can you please stop talking? He said, why? She said, because once you say it, this is exactly what she said, once you say it, I'll hear it. And once I hear it, I'll learn it. And once I learn it, I'll become really uncomfortable. I don't want to learn. You know, I don't want to be like her, but she was honest. She was honest with herself. She chose ignorance over knowledge. She told the Shihan that I would like to be ignorant. Now, not everything what he was saying was right, and that's why we take the knowledge and, put it in our heads and search. I'm saying things to you tonight. Don't believe everything I say. Go and search. Make sure you research and say, everything that he said, is it really true? Search. But she chose what many of us do without saying so, which is, I just don't know. I don't want to hear it. And you know how we do that? We listen to think about this now to yourself. You don't have to disclose it. Think about the news stations you watch, the websites that you go to, your sources of information, or social media that you go to, the friends that you follow. That's your comfort zone. Go and listen to somebody, or read something, or watch something from a source that you don't trust, you don't like. Just go listen to them. If you are, liberal leaning, go and watch Fox News. I know you'd hate them, probably, and it will be a challenge, but go and listen to them. And be honest and say, is what they're saying true? I want to challenge all of us to do this. Go and challenge yourself, if you're conservative, to go and listen to MSNBC or worse, CNN, right? And don't say, this is, because what we do to protect ourselves, we just say, whatever you're saying is garbage. I go there with a prejudgment. It's a prejudgment. Whatever you say, I already condemned you, but I'm here to show you that I'm open-minded. That's what we do, by the way. If you are a good, faithful Muslim, Shia, go to a Sunni mosque. Talk to them, seriously. I actually, during this Ramadan, I probably saw more Sunnis than Shias. Just go and say, why do you think this way? This is why I believe I'm right. Why do you think that you're right? It's okay if they're willing to, if they're open-minded. If you're a Christian, come to a Muslim mosque, go to a Hindu temple, go to other places and just say, why do you believe the way you believe? In the face of it, we all do what appears to be really silly things. Seriously. Let me just tell you, you walk into a church, and a Catholic church, and you just watch people, and you ask them, what are you guys doing? And they go in a line, and they say, we're eating the flesh of Jesus. Now, just think of it, if you're not Catholic, just think of it for a minute, What do you mean? Are you a cannibalist? That doesn't make sense. Drinking the blood of Jesus, which is wine, doesn't make sense, right? The Trinity doesn't make sense to Muslims. You ask Hindus about their faith, they have so many things that just don't make sense to us in the West. Buddhists, because we see artificial things. Muslims, you know what we do when we go to Mecca? Especially men. We take off all of our clothes, put 2 pieces of white cloth, barefoot, we walk around a building that Abraham built over 3,000 years ago. Barefoot. Now that would look strange to people who don't understand what's behind it. Would look strange to people who, the same way it would look strange to, a Jewish rabbi carrying the scrolls and running around with it. It's strange to us. But if you go and ask people, why do you do this? You start to understand more. You might not agree. You're not required to agree. But at least you'll understand. You're required to understand, but not agree. Understand. Understand. We hear a lot about Muslim women being oppressed. Why? No idea. We just hear that they're oppressed. Muslim women can't drive. Just incredible. Every time I hear that, the person who says it to me, I want to practice martial arts with them. 54 Muslim countries, women vote, drive, own businesses, have their rights, run for office, reach the highest office. None of that matters, but because one country, Saudi Arabia, prohibited women from driving, Muslim women cannot drive. Because women put a headscarf on, as soon as they put it on, they become oppressed. Now I see some of our guests here with their heads covered. Do you feel oppressed? What about keeping the faith? I love to see nuns when I travel because they don't do that anymore when they have the habit on. I absolutely love to see them keeping the faith. I respect them because I know that person who's wearing this, I can assume that they're good people. I can assume they have good intentions. I can assume that they love God. I might disagree with them on the Trinity, but I'm not going to say that they're bad people. You know why? Because I'm not allowed to. If I read my own book, which is the Quran, God says about Christians that they have taken monastic ways to be priests and nuns out of the love for God. He says, disagree with them on the Trinity, but he says they do this out of the love for God. That's what the Quran teaches me. Instead of assuming this, really try to understand and try to be fair in your understanding of everything. If we, especially Shia Muslims, we say that we follow the good teachers who came after the Prophet, not the bad ones who created ISIS. That's what we say. Right? Let's learn from our first Imam, Imam Ali. How he treated not only Muslims, not only Shia Muslims, Sunni Muslims, but also non-Muslims. He saw one time when he was the head of the Islamic country, which by the way was the superpower back then. During his reign, it was the superpower of the time. And he was walking down the street just like everybody else. People didn't know him. They didn't have TV or newspapers or pictures. Many people didn't know who the leader was. They heard of him. And so he was walking down the street and he saw an old man begging for help, for money. So he approached him. And he said, why are you asking for money? He said, I don't have any. I'm poor. He asked the people around, he said, why haven't you helped him? They said, he's Jewish. He's not Muslim, so we're not supposed to help him. He said, how dare you even think that way? He said, for every subject in the Islamic government, country, he instituted a welfare system that nobody should ever go hungry. Be like them. Or when he was one time traveling with his soldiers, and they passed by an old church, ruined church, and somebody made a statement. He said, of course, a Muslim, right? His soldiers are Muslims, and he says, how many times God was disobeyed in this place? Why? Because they were Christians, of course. They had to be wrong. And the Imam said, no, don't say this. He said, they were sincere in their love of God. He said, don't say this. Rather say that how many times God was worshipped in this place. He said, even if we disagree with them, and he said such a beautiful, beautiful statement of justice that we all humans should really hold dear to. He said, for he who seeks the truth and doesn't attain it, so somebody seeks the truth and they can never find it. They're just not as smart as us, right? They just couldn't find it. He said, he who seeks the truth and doesn't attain it is not like he who seeks falsehood and finds it. Big difference. Big difference between well-intentioned people and evil-intentioned people. And so we look at humans as followers of Imam Ali, as Shia Muslims. We look at humans exactly like our Prophet and our Imams taught us. The statement that the United Nations praised should be something that we should have in our homes, in our mosques, in our cars, and we should live every day. He said, look at every human being as either your brother in faith or equal in humanity. Equal in humanity. What Imam Ali wanted us to view every human being, regardless of their ethnicity, race, culture, faith, no matter who they are, as a masterpiece of God's creation. That's what Imam Ali says in his book, Peaks of Eloquence. In poetry, he talks to us. He says, you think you're nothing. And I'm paraphrasing, simplifying very difficult poetry. He says, you think you are nothing. You look at the heavens and everything and you think you're nothing. But he says, God created you in a way that you are greater than the heavens and the earth. That is every human being. And that is what we as Muslims and our guests are required to do, is to learn about our neighbors. Ask him. That's the knowledge that our Prophet instructed us to do. Ask him, why do you have that decoration during that day? Why do you do these things? If they are willing to, obviously, right? Teach them if they ask you. If they come and knock on your door and say, I want to learn. Why are you wearing a hijab to the woman? Or why do you have, you look like a hobo for me, you try to grow a beard. Why aren't you eating? We don't see you eating in Ramadan. Whatever they want to ask. Or we heard something about Islam. We're in news today. I have friends who call me up and say to me, hey, Awada, this event that involved Muslims, can you tell us what you think about it? And I love telling them. It's my personal opinion, and I'm opinionated, so I feel good about doing that, right? So people seek to understand. I wholeheartedly believe that the vast majority of us humans want to learn and are sincere about wanting to understand. I believe the very, very few people who don't want to know, and they are almost always are the judgmental ones, are fearful of knowing something that will make them uncomfortable. Very fearful. Just like that woman in the dojo who said, once I learn it, I cannot unlearn it. It makes us uncomfortable to learn the goodness of other people, which is incredible. I'll stop here. Hopefully you have a lot of questions because we have a lot of time. But we'll take questions, and there is a mic. I think somebody has a mic. Okay. And by the way, oh yeah, yes, yeah, absolutely. How many do you have? So the people who ask the first questions, the three, will get a book. My book. This is Islam and Christianity, Brothers at Odds. If you don't have it, okay. Do you have this book?
I do not.
Okay. So do you mind giving it to me?
I can come up if you're okay
with that.
No,
we'll bring it to you.
I guess as a guest in your community, what would be your best remarks or best advice to counteract there's always bad people in all religious groups, but especially in the United States here, the ones that seem to be speaking the most negatively are coming from the Christian organizations. How do we help support all of you in life, in politics, and just allow everyone to have the same opportunity, because that's the point.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful question. It actually speaks of your goodness yourself. First, know that we in the Muslim community, and I know I speak for each and every one of us, we have imams sitting right with you, some globally known imams, sitting right actually in the rows where you're sitting, who speak to the world, not just here. Know that no Muslim will ever hold all Christians or Christianity for the acts of a few. Guaranteed. We know that the people who do these things are not acting in the name of Christ. Rest assured of that. Know that we will never issue a blanket judgment on all churches and churchgoers, or people who proclaim to be Christian, even marginally. That will never happen. Second is please educate them. Please invite them to come to the mosques. Tell us. We will have nice meals for them. We will have them come and just observe. I'm just astonished astonished at how much ignorance there is out there. So I have a barber who I really like, just talks and tells a lot of stories, and he thinks, and I really want to emphasize this, he thinks he's a devout Christian, because he does a lot of things. As a scholar in Christianity, I know he's out in left field somewhere, right? But a good guy, there is no question. So I told him, his name is Frank, good guy. I'm trying to get him here. He hasn't yet. Maybe I'll get him here one day. So Frank, I told him, I said, Frank, I'm a Muslim. He said, oh, I've never heard of that before, quote unquote. I said, yeah, I am. He said, oh, okay. And then, we start talking, and we, talked about sports and just barber talk. And then he says, yeah, tonight I'm going to meet up with some of my buddies. We go and we stake out mosques. And I just told him, a Muslim. I said, Frank, stake out mosques, what do you do? He said, yeah, there's one in Bloomington. There is a park in front of it. And he said, we go and take video cameras and, we stick them on. We see who comes in and comes out. And he said, Frank, why don't you just go in? That actually didn't register with him. It was just too much of a thought to say, go in. And so what he said to me, and he said it exactly this way, he said, you never know what goes on in those places, I said, Frank, come with me. I go to a mosque. He just continued that as if he wasn't hearing me. Because I bet you he just has absolutely no idea what a Muslim or a mosque or Islam is, yet he takes steps to go and stake out a mosque. Now, I don't believe that Frank will do anything bad. I can guarantee him. But the guys that he's with, who are taking him, dragging him out after working for 8 or 12 or 15 hours, you never know what they do, right? He said, we noticed that, the Muslims, they come out of the mosque and they'd go to the park. I don't know which mosque he's talking about in Bloomington. There is a mosque that has a park in front of it. And he said, they take the kids there, and when they do that, nobody wants to be around them. I said, why? He said, well, they're Muslims. Teach them. That's all we ask. Invite them to come with you to the mosque. Say, I guarantee you safety. They will not blow you up. They will not bite you. They will not do. Just listen. Or give them something to read. Call me. I'll give you a copy of my book. I'd like to have the mosque pay for it, but read the book. They will be surprised. They'll absolutely be surprised. I was just recently in a panel, a couple of months ago, in a panel discussion with an atheist. So it was an atheist, a Muslim, an evangelical Christian, and a Native American. Sounds like a joke, right? So my turn came to speak, and I said, we Muslims, we just want you to know that we believe in Jesus, we believe in the Immaculate Birth, and believe in the virgin birth of Jesus from Mary, and we believe Mary was a holy woman. We believe Jesus was the Messiah, and he interrupted me. He said, hallelujah, brother. There are many Muslims who came to Christ before. He said, wait a minute. Every Muslim believes this. He was so shocked. So shocked to hear, oh, you believe that Jesus is the Messiah? Yes. Google it. What do Muslims believe about Jesus? You believe he's infallible? Yes. You believe he'll come back and establish the kingdom of God? Absolutely. He was confused. Because he was confused, and I don't blame him for being confused. Well, if that's the case, what makes us different, right? And I told him, his name is Josiah. I said, Josiah, I know this makes you uncomfortable. It makes you uncomfortable to hear this. But I'll give you some things to think about that will make you comfortable. I don't believe in the Trinity. And now he felt a big relief. Oh, there's the difference. It's amazing. We Muslims have the same problem. One Muslim, Shias don't do that. But there are some Muslims who do not accept us as Muslims. And you ask them why, they have absolutely no idea. They just don't accept us. We tell them, hey, we believe in the same God, the same prophet, the same book. We believe in the same, day of judgment. We believe in pilgrimage the same way. We pray together. We pray to the same direction. We fast during the month of Ramadan. We do everything. Oh, yeah, that's fine, but still you're not Muslim. I had friends, one specific friend that I will not forget about, who was a business colleague, and I didn't see him for a number of years, and one day we got together at a Caribou Coffee, and I asked him, I said, well, I haven't seen you for a while. Well, how have you been? He says, well, I became a Christian. I said, well, what? You were Catholic? He said, yeah, no, I know. I was Catholic, but I became Christian. So I said, well, so what's different? And I know the differences. I know the differences. I said, what's different? They believe in Jesus. They believe he died for your sins. They believe in the Trinity. They believe in all this stuff. Nope, they're not Christian. He has the key to paradise. And none of us will go there if we don't believe in Jesus the way that he exactly believes, or if we believe in God, in Allah, or the Prophet Muhammad is exactly the same way that they will keep digging, debate any of them. They'll keep digging. What do you mean you believe in Jesus as the Messiah? That's, when they ask you that question is, what's the difference? Tell me what's the difference so I can feel better about myself. And this happens with the minority Sunnis who do not take many other Muslims as Muslim. If you leave it to Wahhabis within Islam, seriously, actually the Quran speaks about a group of people like that. It says if they had the keys to the treasures of the heavens, they will be stingy with allowing people to use them. You ask Wahhabis, how many people are going to heaven? They will say very, very, very few. If you count it, they probably will count them for you. If you ask some certain Christian sects, as you know, one Christian sect that says 140,000 or 144,000 people will go to heaven. It would be an epic failure by God, which is impossible, that he has all of these billions and billions of people from the time of Adam until the second coming, who all are doomed to failure. It's not like that. God doesn't work like that. God, no, none of us have monopoly over God. None of us. Yet many of us, unfortunately, think so silly about God and about faith and about goodness that it reminds me of Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson. Two banged up heads that probably understand very little about the world. Mike Tyson was a Muslim. It doesn't matter that he violates every teaching of Islam. I'm not supposed to talk bad about people actually during the month of Ramadan, but there you go. And then Holyfield. So Evander Holyfield found Jesus like he was lost. Jesus is with us. He's in our hearts every day. And Mike Tyson thought he was a Muslim. If you take your faith from two men whose heads were banged up so badly, there's something wrong with you. And so the press conference before the fight, they were saying, my God is right, I'm going to win. My God is right, I'm going to win. They have the same God, same creator. But no, it's my God, and I have big muscles, and you'll see. And then, I don't remember, actually Mike Tyson lost that fight. Holyfield, in the press conference afterwards, he said, well, now let's see whose God was right. You know, it's silly, but how many humans are like that? How many of us are like that? How many of us? How many people who speak in the name of Christianity, in the name of Christ, who speak about others, who are a disgrace to Christ, who are like that? How many Muslims who speak in the name of God, in the name of our beloved Prophet, who was one of the most, he was absolutely the most beloved and kind and forgiving and loving human being that you can ever study. Speak on his behalf and they are a disgrace to him. There are many people like that. So, practical steps. Learn so you can teach them. Invite them to know a Muslim. I bet you people who are like that have never ever met a Muslim. Have them call me. I'll give you my information. I'll buy him lunch. I will. I'll say, take your stab at it. Tell me whatever you want. Bring him to mosque. Have him read a book. Have him read the Quran. What I noticed about most Islamophobic Christians is that they will not read the Quran. Why? It's because they were told it's an evil book. Okay, well, so even I know there are a lot of evil books out there. I'll read them. I don't care. They won't affect me. I'm not that fungible. You know, I'll be able to read the book and make up my mind. No, don't do that. It makes you do bad things. Where? I will give anybody who can point to the Quran where it makes you do bad things, I'll give them $10,000 a check. Go find it. Afraid of it. I've debated scholars Christian scholars who were afraid to read the Quran. They said, no, I'll never read the Quran. It's a people. Well, how do you, and they quote it too. At the same time, they stand on a podium and say, the Quran says this. Well, how the heck do you know that it does if you've never read it? I've heard and seen emails from friends, actually, I was hoping that some of them would be here tonight, they weren't, who forwarded me emails saying, can you comment on this? Non-Muslims, but friends. These verses from the Quran are terrible. It happened to me many, many times. Absolutely scary, bloody, terrible verses from the Quran. And when I see them, I say they're not from the Quran. Where did you get them? The excuses that I heard were I got them from a friend of mine, an email. I had an employee who, during the time that me and this gentleman worked in the same place, and a couple of others back there, who sent an email around to 3,300 employees, quoting the Quran, a verse that talks about when the eagle shall roar and, that the evil will trample, and he quotes the Quran, chapter such and such, verse such and such. It doesn't exist. So when I called him on it, luckily he reported to me. You know what he said? Oops, sorry, I didn't know that you were in the mailing list. Now, how many 3,300 people have received that email who wouldn't see the answer that this doesn't exist in the Quran? Challenge people. When they say the Quran says this, say show me. Islam teaches this, show me. The only thing that you really can't help is, no, Muslims, they have ulterior motives, All of 1.7 billion Muslims hold secrets. My God, we can't get along about when Eid is going to be, Tuesday or Wednesday, let alone keep it secrets that long. Anyway, I'm sorry, long answer. Any other questions? Did you have a question? You had your hand up?
Oh, yes, I had a question, but I already have a copy of the book.
Okay.
No, the question is this.
By the way, the women have to ask questions. We don't conclude until the women ask questions, so go ahead. So you better get some questions.
Okay. The author, Rumi, is a best-selling author or poet in the United States. A lot of people, one of them being Coleman Barks, has paraphrased his poetry and recorded his poetry. And what I wanted you to do is, because a lot of people have heard of Rumi, but they don't know what Rumi believes, where his beliefs come from. I would like you to describe what Sufism is and where it came from.
Yeah, do you guys know who Rumi is? Have you heard of him? There is a question back there when I'm done here. So Rumi was a poet, a mystic, mesmerizing poetry in whatever language you read, really, practically. He wrote most of his poetry in Arabic and Persian, I believe. And when you read his poetry, it touches your soul. So by most accounts, he was a Sufi. Some say he was a Shia, some say he was a Sunni. I believe that he was a Sufi. He was neither. Sometimes I kind of lean towards thinking that he was a Shia, but then he praises people that I wouldn't in Islam. So which makes me think that he's not. So Sufism, the word Suf means wool. The material that you get from sheep and wool. And it's if you ever wear a wool sweater that's knitted, hand knitted, they're hard on the skin, they scratch and all that stuff. So Sufis were a movement that started within Islam early on. And by the way, in other faiths, priesthood is kind of similar to that. Monks kind of believe the same way. In Judaism, Capella, are like that. Kind of a mystic, a way of looking at the world, as the material world, as something that is not important. I dispel, I don't want to have any attachment to the material world and its comforts. So I will not wear, and comfortable clothes ever if I was a Sufi. So they would wear wool, and that's why they were called Sufi, the people of wool, to identify them. So the Sufi, my research about them actually led me to conclude that they were a movement that wanted to follow the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, the offspring of the Prophet, but because it was prohibited in the Sunni world to do that, they created a movement where people would gather at the corner of a neighborhood, at a house, and they literally called it Zawiya, which means corner. And there would be a teacher who teaches them the teachings of the Imams, the true teachings of Islam according to us, about morality, love, forgiveness, indulgence in God, and not get involved in politics or not criticize those who committed evil things in the name of Islam, the rulers. And so Sufism started and spread from there into many different, they call them methods. They used to call them Zawiya, corners. But then each teacher of those corners would have their own method of thinking about God. You've heard about the whirling dervishes. They would turn around until they reach nirvana. So some of them were influenced by Eastern religions, right? Another one would say, I'll stand and mention the name of God 100,000 times. Some would say, I'll fast for a year. Not obviously break their fast at sunset, right? So whatever their journey is to find God, that's what they would do. Each one of these became known as tariqa, which means method. We have an expert, actually. Where is Sheikh Sharif Muhammad? Thought I saw him come in here somewhere. Sheikh, can you stand up for a second? This is, I really kid you not, this is one of the most top scholars in the world, and on Sufism too. So correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, and so each one of these became a method, and now you have many, many methods around the world. Dominant ones are Naqshbandis, Adawis, many of them, right? Predominantly North Africa, Turkey, Iraq now. Even in Shia Islam, there are people who learn towards the Sufi methods as well. Did that answer your question? But I'm not a Sufi. I absolutely have a lot of love and respect for Sufis. They're peaceful. They're good people. You'll never find anything but love and care by Sufis for the most part. And I say for the most part because there is one Sufi sect in southern Turkey and northern Iraq that's violent, which doesn't add up. But that's a whole different discussion. Sister, go ahead, please. Can you give her the microphone? By the way, the questions are, you can ask if you're a Muslim or a non-Muslim, it doesn't matter. And it can be about anything.
Why do Shia Muslims pray on a turba?
Wonderful. Turba is this. Okay? This is a piece of clay that's molded to be clay. Okay? So the sister is asking, Sunni brothers and sisters do not pray, and they say pray on the right. So if we have Sunni brothers or sisters with us tonight, and if you observe them, they will just pray on the rug. We don't, Shias don't, for a number of reasons. One is a theological reason, and is that God says in the Quran that from this God created us, and to it He shall bring us back, and from it He will resurrect us. It is the lowest part that we always step on. It is from which we're created. So we put the most exalted part of us, which is our forehead, on it as a sign of humility and a sign that you created us from this. I'll put my forehead on it to show you that I'm most humble in my prostration to you, God. That's one. The second reason behind this is that we Muslims, Shias and Sunnis, agree that we are to live according to the conduct, sayings, or concurrences of the Prophet. That's what we call sunnah. Whatever the Prophet said, taught us to do or not to do, we'll obey him. Whatever he told us whatever he did, we're supposed to do, and whatever he saw us doing and he didn't tell us not to do it, then it's okay to do. That's the definition of sunnah. If you hear the word sunnah, that's what it means. So if we follow the sunnah of the Prophet, then we'll have to pray on a piece of clay like this, because that's what he did. The Prophet, according to Sunni sources as well as Shia sources, had what's called a khumura, which is a piece of cloth, in which he had a piece of clay that he carried with him wherever he went, and he would pray on it. The third thing is that companions, like Abdullah ibn Abbas, there's a famous hadith or narration from him, where he said, you know, if you have been to Saudi Arabia, you'll relate to this. He said, when we prostrated ourselves on the ground, he said the sand was so hot, it would burn our faces. If you have been to Saudi Arabia, you know exactly what he's talking about. It gets so hot, you can't actually step on the ground barefoot. So he said, we asked the Prophet for permission to pray on the corners of our clothes, to put them under our heads. And he said the Prophet didn't give us permission to do that. The Prophet said, no, take the sand before you prostrate and turn the sand upside down. Anybody from the desert here, so you know what I'm talking about? You know, it gets really hot. If you put your hand down the sand and get the sand that's underneath up, it's cool. So you can put your forehead on it. And he said, or if you choose, you can take the palm tree leaves and put them on the ground and pray on them. That's why we Shias, adhere to what the Prophet said. And, our Sunni brothers actually praying on carpets, that's a very, very late event in the history of Islam. It actually came during the early time of the Ottomans. The head of, the spiritual head of Wahhabism was an 8th century man by the name of Ibn Taymiyyah. And I wish we all knew the Sheikh's language. He has a beautiful lecture. He dissects Ibn Taymiyyah almost literally in how Ibn Taymiyyah was such an evil influence within Islam. But Ibn Taymiyyah, who hates Shias, he actually gave a verdict that every Shia is a heretic that should be killed. And if you kill a Shia, you'll go to heaven automatically. That's why, by the way, when you hear about Muslims blowing up mosques, it's the Wahhabis, for the most part, killing Shias, although they killed other Sunnis that they don't like. So this guy, Ibn Taymiyyah, who is a vehement enemy of Shias, gave a verdict. He comes to my mosque and prays on a rug. That's Ibn Taymiyyah. Don't be surprised by this. He said, kill him. He doesn't say, give and take with them, teach or anything, just kill him. He has 428 verdicts where he says, if a person doesn't do this, kill him. That's what gives a bad name to Islam, by the way. That's when you hear, we hear a lot of bad things that Muslims do, you're right. It's the followers of this guy, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Abdul Wahhab, his disciple that came many years later. 428 verdicts like this. So he says, if anybody prays on rugs, kill him. They have to pray on the ground, just like Shias. But now when the Ottoman Empire came, and the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, by the way, until this day, they have a big industry for rugs. It became a sign of loyalty to the Ottoman Empire to have a rug wherever you go to show that you are a subject of the Sultan and that you accept the Sultan. And people think it's part of the faith. It has absolutely nothing to do with the faith. But try to change it if you can. Go ahead. Follow-up question? Okay. We really do oppress our women here. We make them ask questions in the masjid. Yeah.
Where can
Question, actually. There's a copy. I have one more copy. But it's in Amazon. Walaikum assalam. So there's your copy, sister, okay? Can somebody take it to her, please? Okay. And the younger sister has a question.
Why do people fast?
Well, the simple answer to that is because God said so. But the long answer is because when you look in the Quran, it's explained that why we should fast. God says in the Quran in chapter 2 and in other places that God had ordained fasting upon you, all Muslims, as He had ordained it on people before you, so that you may gain piety, that you may become more God aware. So when you fast, if you noticed, we become more careful. We become more careful about what we say, what we look at. Obviously, we don't eat during the day. We eat at night. We're more careful about making sure that the money, the wealth that God gave us, no matter how small or big it is, that we have given charity out of it. We become more careful about mentioning other people's names, right? So it's a way to train us to be better. Another reason behind this is fasting. When we give charity to poor people, to help poor people, we don't really feel the pain that they have. We help them, and it's a good thing, but we don't feel the pain that we have. What if there was an instruction, and there isn't such an instruction in Islam, that says, for a month, leave your house, go live with poor people, live their lives, starve like they starve every single day. They need medicine, they don't have money for it. They need a shelter, they don't have a shelter for it. Imagine if we had empathy instead of sympathy for people. Fasting forces us to have empathy for people. Fasting, I'm starving now. It has been about 17, 18 hours that I haven't eaten, right? By choice, because I say, I obey you, God, because I want to feel the suffering of my brother and sister or the children around the world. So now I exactly feel the way they feel. That is why during the month of Ramadan, charity in the the Islamic world, that's one thing about Islam that is amazing. So much charity flies around, immense throughout the Muslim world. Homelessness, all of these poverty-stricken diseases that we see in non-Muslim countries do not exist in the Muslim world, for the most part. But hunger and starvation, the need that even if you want to, you can't have access to food, the only way that you can feel that pain is by fasting. So God wants us to have empathy for those who suffer. Further, as you know, the Quran, and Allah says in the Quran that our faith is an extension of the faiths of those who before us that God sent. Fasting was prescribed. Jesus fasted for 40 days. St. Paul instructs people to fast too. We believe that every prophet and every nation before us had fasting. I think a lot of people would agree with us. I teach at a Catholic university, so I speak a lot about the Catholics. They have fasting. They have fasting that changed from the 60s to now. Changed from the 1900s to now. Where you go back, that fasting was a lot more like Islamic fasting. Jews fast. There is one day that Jews fast for 24 hours. 24 hours, non-stop. We're not allowed to do that in Islam. We fast basically during the day for the most part. So fasting is a good thing. In addition, health-wise, all you have to do is go Google, nothing to do with Islam, the benefits of fasting. You will fast. Even if you're an atheist, you'll fast because of what it does to you. Health-wise, I know we have a number of medical professionals here. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. My daughter, who lives in Arizona, and it is a lot hotter than here, drier than here. She was telling me a couple of, 3-4 days ago, she said, did you know that after you fast for 12 hours, that your body starts to regenerate your body cells? So it's really good for you, fasting. It regenerates. It makes you healthier. There are many, many, many good reasons for fasting. But probably one good reason is to give those who cook in our homes a break too during the day from breakfast and lunches.
Per your experience, what's the similarity between Christianity and Islam, and what's the biggest difference?
Well, thank you for the good question. Again, please buy my book, Amazon. And the next person who would raise their hand, I'll give it to them. Okay, you can have it. The similarities are vast. We believe in God the Creator. We believe in the grace of God. We believe that most people in humanity will be saved by the grace of God, not because of our beliefs or because of our works or because of our actions. And I say our beliefs, I say that with a grain of salt. We need to believe in God. But most people just don't have the means, don't have the capacity, don't have the environment to allow them to fairly know. So we believe that the vast majority of humans will be saved by the grace of God. The grace of God is the most important thing in our lives, Muslims and Christians alike. We believe in the 10 Commandments. We believe in being good to your neighbors, being good to yourself, good to your family members. We believe in forgiveness. We believe in love. We believe in turning the other cheek. And I say that with, again, with an explanation that needs to take place at another time. We believe in the day of judgment and resurrection. We believe in heaven and hell. We believe in being held accountable. Humanity will be held accountable. We believe God sent prophets, sent revelation. We believe that God sent, from Adam, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, all the prophets. We believe in the same prophets. We believe in Jesus. We believe that he was born of the Virgin Mary. We believe that he was the Messiah. We believe that God took him up to heaven. We believe that he will come back to establish the kingdom of God. We believe that he was the messenger of love and peace. And I think that's about it. We believe in almost the same thing, right? So everybody that I described above you can apply it to a Muslim or a Christian equally. The difference is that, when you say Muslims and Christians, there isn't one flavor of Muslims or Christians, okay? So in Christianity, when we say that Christians believe in the Trinity, not all Christians, but there are Unitarians who don't believe in the Trinity or the divinity of Jesus. But the vast majority do. And even when it comes to the Trinity, when you ask one, and forgive me for saying it this way, but in the interest of time, one flavor Christian versus another, they would disagree on what that Trinity is. Actually, Christians fought wars over the nuances of what the Trinity is, what the word means. They fought wars. The history of Christians is as crazy as the history of Muslims, killing each other over words, believe it or not. But we disagree on the Trinity. For the vast majority of Christians believe in the Trinity, and Muslims do not believe in the Trinity. There are Unitarians who do not believe in the Trinity. There are differences where we don't believe in original sin, but you have sects in Christianity who do not believe in original sin. I would dare say that wherever there is a difference between Muslims and Christians, there are Muslims and Christians who would agree with the other side, except probably for the Trinity itself. Now, the fundamental differences, the two fundamental differences, is that the Trinity, do we believe that Jesus was divine? If you mean by divine he was God or part of Godhead, then no, we don't believe that. If you mean that he was chosen by God and he was the Messiah and infallible, we certainly believe that. We do not believe that God allowed the hands of the criminals to reach Jesus, and therefore we don't believe that he was resurrected. And we have our evidence, and I discussed this here. It's a small book, but I discuss it in good details, I think. So those are the differences, and that leads to debate, If you don't believe that Jesus died for our sins, that's the foundation of Christianity today. So again, so when you look, do we believe as Muslims that Jesus would have accepted to die for us? At a heartbeat. But we say factually because he was the Messiah, and the Messiah's role is to establish the kingdom of God, And he wasn't given a chance by the people of the time. God took him up to heaven until people are ready, and God will send him back, and he will fulfill his mission. So we believe that his mission wasn't fulfilled the first time. So these are the differences. Nonetheless, great question. And what I believe what we should do is we should focus on the goodness that we have. Yeah, I would love to sit down with my Christian friends and debate with them why, this and why that, and where does it say this in the Bible or in the Quran, and then after that go and have lunch together. It has to be after Ramadan. Right? But what I think we should do is I think we should hold hands and go and care for our neighbors. Care for the homeless, care for the orphans. Go and tell corrupt politicians not to send bombs around the world in our name, both as Americans, but as Muslim and Christian Americans. I don't want a single penny of my dollars, my tax dollars, to go towards anything. For those of you who are not Muslim, you should know this. Muslims, we will not invest in anything that has anything to do with firearms, tobacco, alcohol, or gambling. Evil things. I think our Christian brothers should hold hands with us and sisters. They should hold hands with us. These are the teachings of Jesus. I am sometimes, and I think it's time, right? I am sometimes disappointed in my Christian neighbors, our Christian brethren, who do not hold to the teachings of Jesus truly. Because if they do, then we will do the same exact things. The world would be a much better place instead of focusing on differences. Let's not focus on the differences. We should know them. It's our right as Muslims and Christians. We definitely should know them. We should understand them. But we shouldn't make them points of contention. We should focus on the good things that we as humans should do together. And the good news is there are a lot of activities that this masjid, the other masjid, many other masjids have initiatives, projects where we do with other communities that are Christian communities to feed the poor, feed the children, to care for the homeless, food shelves, you name it. We have a clinic up here that is free to everybody, regardless of whatever. No criterion shall be looked at if you come to the clinic. This gentleman here is involved with it, and a number of other doctors. And we have non-Muslim doctors who, one of them actually drives from Red Wing, thank you. Drives up here to volunteer his time. He's not Muslim. That's what God wants from us, to go and help the poor. Because at the end of the day, Maisam and everybody else, it really doesn't matter what we say. What matters is what's in our hearts and what we do on the ground. Thank you very much. Really enjoy it. And remember that it's not only in Ramadan that people are invited here. Throughout the year, anytime you want to come and visit, reach out to me, to anybody in the mosque. And you actually don't need an invitation. Just know that there is a program going on. Am I right? Okay. Thank you very much. Time to eat now, right? Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you all for coming and being part of this. Now, the rest of the night,